Welcome to Podcast of All Podcasts. Enjoy best moments of podcast history.
I have someone who needs me, someone I've needed so long. For once unafraid, I can go where life leads me. Somehow I know I'll be strong. For once I can touch what my heart used to dream of long before I knew. Oh, someone warm like you would make my dream come true. Yeah, yeah, yeah. For once in my life, I won't let sorrow hurt me, not like it's hurt me before. For once I have something I know won't desert me. I'm not alone anymore. For once I can say, this is mine, you can't take it. Long as I know I have love, I can make it. For once in my life, I have someone who needs me. Hey, yeah. Oh, dear Lord. For once in my life. I won't let sorrow hurt me, not like it's hurt me before. For once I have something I know won't desert me. I'm not alone anymore. For once I can say, this is mine, you can't take it. Long as I know I have love, I can make it. For once in my life, I have someone who needs me.
Dak Shepard with Katie Couric.
And I thought viewers would have interesting questions that maybe we missed.
You get very deep inside the forest, right? And you're
And I remember one of the vice president of the news division said to a colleague of mine, I think it's really beneath the anchor of the CBS Evening News to be on the Twitter.
right.
And I was like, clearly this is not a sort of looking ahead at the future organization.
Yeah.
And I remember getting a question, Dax, and it was, how much oil is down there? And I was like, you see?
Yeah.
That's a really interesting
Was it
question.
10 gallons?
No, but it was a lot of oil. I don't even remember how much it was or if it was an infinite amount.
Millions of gallons.
But, so I have always tried to keep an eye on what's happening in the landscape and embrace it rather than shy away from it.
Yeah, and you've worked through a couple of big paradigm shifts. One of them being when you started, there were 3 options for news generally, or maybe 2 on your local. And then the 24-hour news cycle started, and CNN was born, and MSNBC, and all these things. And what was your initial reaction to that?
I actually started at ABC News as a desk assistant right out of college. Mm-hmm. But then CNN was just starting. So I worked at CNN before it even started.
Oh, really? Did you have encounters with Ted Turner?
I saw him from afar. I didn't really know him. I remember the first meeting he had with all these bright-eyed CNN people who were very excited about this new way of delivering the news. And I remember he got up in front of all the employees and said, we're going to beam this shit all over the place. And everyone was like, really? That's our fearless leader? But so, of course, he's kind of a larger than life figure.
Yeah.
But So I was kind of right there as that changed and have kind of tried to iterate, as they say, in tech all along.
Am I right to guess, though, that at the peak of the 3 network options, when you had like a Ted Koppel or Tom Brokaw or one of these guys were getting tons of money, right? Because their viewership was in the tens of millions, right? And so when it became kind of diluted by all these other positions, did that bring the overall salary down for everyone?
Not in the early days.
Okay.
You know, I think, for example, when I was able to be a co-anchor on the Today Show, that show is such a cash cow.
Yeah.
Morning shows bring in a ton of money to network news divisions. So as a result, you had a lot of leverage when it came to your salary if you were considered an important part of that program.
Yeah.
So for the duration of my time at the Today Show, you know, I was very well compensated.
Right. And just so people understand, the reason those are so profitable, not just the viewership, but the cost of making them is very inexpensive, right? Because you're on one set, you have your cameras already set, and you can bang out real-time content, right?
Right, and the ad revenues are high. They're reaching, you know, I don't know.
People watch it live as well.
Yeah, I don't know as much as they used to, but the key demographics are younger, probably women who are making a lot of the purchasing decisions. You know, I've never really kind of explored totally the ad revenue models on those shows, but you know, they got good ratings. They're consistent. I think they were brand friendly, right? All those things.
Yeah. Monica and I were just at a live podcast at Dolby Center, and we learned. Actually, now I'm confusing Sam Harris.
Should say it.
Yeah, we're obsessed with Sam Harris. We talk about him every single podcast. Steven Pinker on as a guest, and then they did a live thing at Dolby, which was really fascinating. But 80% of the consumer market is driven by women. Women are making 80% of the decisions.
I think it's even sometimes I've heard as high as 85%. So
really,
yes,
viewership is skewing female as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
yes, mostly women.
I have to imagine an ideal spot to advertise if you're trying to sell something to the ladies. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So you grew up in Virginia.
I did.
Is that an idyllic childhood? Was it rural? It
wasn't rural. It was extremely suburban.
Okay.
I grew up in Arlington in Northern Virginia, which is really a suburb of Washington, D.C. So most of the people in my neighborhood, they worked for the federal government. My dad did not, but he was in journalism early in his career. He grew up in Dublin, Georgia. He went to Mercer in Macon, Georgia, wrote for the Macon Telegraph when he graduated from college rather, and then went and worked for the Atlanta Constitution, United Press, and we moved to Washington, and he transferred into public relations, which I always thought was a shame, honestly, because my dad was so smart and such a Renaissance man, could talk fluently about just about anything.
Yeah.
And I just don't think he was I just don't think PR was a great fit for him. I mean, he did it.
Right.
But I wish he had
Was
stuck
he
with
drawn
journalism.
into it for financial reasons?
I think so, yeah. I think it was really hard to raise a family of 4 kids on a newspaper man's salary.
Yeah.
And so that's why he went into that field. But
And were you a daddy's girl?
you know, I love both my parents so much. You know, I think I was inspired by my dad, and he really encouraged me to pursue journalism because I was always a pretty good writer. I remember the head of the NAB was a man named Vincent Wasilewski. And my mom picked my dad and Mr. Wasilewski up at the airport, and I was in the back of our station wagon. And I kept asking him if he wanted to hear a joke because I was sort of a little joker like you were when you were little. And it was when Polish jokes were all the rage.
Oh, sure.
And so my mom.
In fact, if you do the setup, I bet I can do the punchline.
Yeah, my mom, knowing that Vincent Wasilewski probably would not find Polish jokes super amusing, was about to blow a gasket, and she was driving. She said, "No, Katie," and Mr. Wasilewski was like, "Come on, tell the joke, the joke." And of course, I got immediately the vibe from my mom that I should not go there, but it was a
you didn't get it out.
No.
Were you going to ask him how to get a one-armed Polish man out of a tree?
No. How?
Wave.
I don't get it.
Well, because
one arm he would wave.
One arm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to use the pejorative term.
Those were all the rage for a little while, which is interesting because today it would be considered obviously culturally inappropriate. It's culturally insensitive and highly inappropriate.
Well, we talk about this nonstop. We're kind of obsessed with this issue because
I would love to hear you talk about this because I'm doing a whole hour for National Geographic on this.
It's about this.
Well, I'm doing 6 hours, and one of the episodes is about sort of this heightened cultural sensitivity, what's happening not only on college campuses, but in literature, in books, Dr.
just
Seuss.
all of academia, too.
Yeah, fashion. It's been really interesting.
Yeah, and so let me just, because I always make the mistake of saying after the fact, I'll make this argument, and then I go, oh, it should go without saying, I think women and men should make the same amount. But I've just said a bunch of other stuff. So I'm just going to start by saying, I'm probably getting to the age where I should shut up. I think inevitably as culture changes, you're going to get left behind on some topics, and I can accept that. And I can recognize that there are going to be things I just don't agree with as I get older and older. So this could be one of them. I could be wrong, but I do think we can definitely make Polish jokes because, as Monica would say, I'm white, so I'm entitled to make some Polish jokes, right? I'm probably
but
not.
But are you Polish?
I can tell you I am, yeah. How would you possibly know if I was Polish or not? I think it's within our realm as comedians to be making all the white people jokes we want to make. If we're white men, right? Probably not white female jokes. We should probably stay away from those. And then we can leave it to the comedians that are, say, who's your favorite? The Indian comedian you love?
Hasan Minhaj.
Yeah. So this is something we debated about. Is Hasan Minhaj points out that there is an official immigrant car, which is the Toyota Camry, which is a brilliant observation.
So funny.
And I said, Monica, I could point that same thing out. It's still a great observation. And I lament that I don't have that option, but that's probably just my entitlement and my, wanting to be a part of every single thing. And I'm not allowed to be a part of every single thing.
It's all very interesting because it's changing. And I think people have very sort of hardened opinions about this. And one of the things I wanted to explore in this hour is this dividing us? Is it keeping us from being able to explore things that aren't quote unquote in our lane and part of our cultural purview? Or is this, and it's much more nuanced. I think one of the problems in our culture today is people have these very specific opinions about things and they don't hear other points of view. They don't kind of understand that it's much more nuanced. I think media wise, it's so much easier to kind of say, it's black or white. It's this or that.
So yes, and we talk about this a lot. And my opinion on that is like we have slowly, weirdly embraced technology to the point where we work in binary opposition now. So we are black or white. We are a 1 or a 0.
Well, you're getting affirmation, not information.
Yes, and so this is great because this is a thing that Monica and I were just talking about a couple of days ago, which is I reject the claim that I can't understand your experience. And specifically, I mean, I reject that I can't relate to a human feeling you have. Now, I don't have the black experience. I never will. I don't claim to have that. But the example I gave was this. If you're a Muslim kid growing up in the Midwest and you've got to leave your classroom twice a day to go pray, that must feel very excluding. You must feel very other than, and it's us and them. And so I can't relate to being a Muslim kid leaving to pray twice a day. But I can relate to being learning disabled and going to the special ed room twice a day, which was humiliating beyond belief and excluding, and I felt less than. So, yes, I'm not claiming I know the experience. But
Joe Rogan with Michael Shermer, I think.
How do we know this is what they did? How do we? This is some weird interpretation of some historical events.
Really hard to interpret, and of course, thoughts don't fossilize. So,
no.
I start off early in the book about who are the first people to figure out we're going to die.
Right.
And become aware of our own mortality in a way that, well, maybe I can conceive of being somewhere else. I don't actually die. So we know, elephants grieve and mammals grieve and, cetaceans, dolphins, whales, and so on. And chimps, they feel these mothers are just just depressed and almost suicidal when their infants die. But that's different from, conceiving of like, well, I know I'm going to die because I see people around me going to die, but I conceive of maybe some other place to go. So I start off with something of a paradox that if I ask you to imagine yourself dead, you can't do it, because to imagine anything, you have to be alive. So it's not going to be like falling asleep and waking up the next morning because you have dreams or whatever. It's going to be more like general anesthesia, where it's 10, 9, 8, boom, boom, lights out, but you just never wake up. So, and so we talk about things like, well, there's nothing after death. But even the word "no thing" implies there's a thing, or you're going to this place, there's nothing. Well, no thing, or nowhere, it implies that there's a where that you're not going to, but there's not even a where that you're not going to. And it's like, with Lawrence Krauss and some of these cosmologists, what was there before the Big Bang? So when you say, well, imagine no universe, no stars or planets or galaxies, no light, but there's not even any space or time. And at some point, we don't have the words to even say what it is we're trying to talk about. There's nothing before the Big Bang. You can't even actually talk about it.
Well, don't they think now, though, that it's entirely possible that the Big Bang is like a cycle? And
yes, well, I think it's something like that. I think
it expands and contracts infinitely forever.
Yeah, that's a preferable. Well, again, we have to come up with some way to talk about it. So
don't we also have this weird biological idea based on our own limitations that there's a birth and a death of everything?
Right. So I actually have a chapter devoted to Deepak Chopra and the Eastern wisdom traditions. We're kind of buddies now. And,
really?
Yeah, I went to his center down in Carlsbad and spent some time there. And
you think he's all right?
He's a good guy. Yeah, no, he's totally a good guy. I mean,
he's been, and at times in the past, either misleading or misled.
Yes, sometimes that's right. Some of his recommendations for dietary things or whatever, perhaps. But I know for sure, because I've gotten to know him pretty well, that he totally believes the stuff he says. It sounds like woo-woo, as I used to call it.
Yeah.
But a lot of it, if you interpret it from a kind of a Western Buddhist position, when he says, consciousness is the ground of all being, it's the ontological primitive, these things that sound nonsensical. But if you think about it, sort of from a simple perspective, the entire universe is in your brain, and when you cease to exist, the universe ceases to exist for you. But you're in your brain. Okay, now I call that the weak consciousness principle. It's just sort of true by definition. Now he goes a little bit further and says, that consciousness is everything, and that we bring into existence material stuff by thinking about it or observing it or whatever. And here's some quantum physics experiments that are really spooky. It's like, okay, time out. Quantum physics is weird and spooky. Consciousness is weird and spooky. That doesn't mean they're connected. No, he thinks they are. So it's a debatable point. Okay, but still, the experience of going and so I did the meditation thing and all the massages and the teas and the food and all that stuff, and it's this beachside resort in Carlsbad. You can't help but feeling better. Like, yeah, this stuff works.
Where is Carlsbad?
It's down by Encinitas, north of San Diego.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's a beautiful area.
Totally beautiful. Yeah, Deepak's not done. He's got a good thing going. And not just Deepak. There's other people like Sam Harris. Bob Wright has a new book out called Why Buddhism is True. Okay, so it works. So we're back to, does it work? What do you mean by does it work? Not just for me. I had an experience and I felt better. We got to do better than that for science. So what Deepak and Bob Wright are talking about is that the Western version of Buddhism may actually work medically. It may, lower stress hormones in your body, lower blood pressure, these kinds of things that are measurable, because that's what we want to know from a Western scientific perspective. Not just do I feel better, but 67% of the people who did this particular treatment, they got better by these measurable criteria. Okay, that seems fair enough to me. I'm open to that.
Now, this idea that there's nothing or no thing, that we can't even wrap our head around nothing, because we think of a thing, that there's no thing, but there's never a thing.
Right.
But how do we, or why don't we just say we don't know? Why don't we speculate on the possibility of consciousness being some sort of ethereal thing or something that exists outside of the body? We don't know. We really don't know.
That's what
right?
I say. I conclude, and that I don't know if there's an afterlife or not. At the very end of the book, we can come back to this later. I just say it doesn't really matter whether there's an afterlife or not, because we don't live in the afterlife. We live in this life. So this is the time you got to do whatever you got to do. I call this Alvy's error. Alvy is Alvy Singer, Woody Allen's character in Annie Hall. And remember the scene early in the movie where he has a flashback as a young boy, and he's in the psychiatrist's office with his mom, and what's the problem? He won't do his homework. You won't do your homework? Why won't you do your homework, Alvy? He says, the universe is expanding. He says, the universe is expanding. He goes, the universe is everything there is. And if it's expanding, one day it's all going to blow apart. So nothing really matters. I'm not going to do my homework. And his mother yells at him, what does the universe got to do with this? We live in Brooklyn. Brooklyn is not expanding. So that's my sort of take-home message there. We don't live in the afterlife,
right?
Or before the universe or after the. None of that matters. I mean, it's interesting to talk about, but we live in this life.
Yeah.
So this is what really counts.
They're fascinating things to contemplate, but ultimately, you really, for practicality's sake, you really should be paying attention to life.
Totally. I mean, this is what I tell Deepak all the time when he says, well, Michael, this table is actually made of atoms that are mostly empty space, and the quantum physicists, blah, blah.
According to Sean Carroll, that's not correct.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, he explained that. Yeah, this whole idea of empty space. He's like, that's just a poor way of describing it.
Okay.
And
all right.
I would defer to him and let him describe it.
All right.
He also described the superpositions, like particles, subatomic particles being in superposition, where they're in a state of moving and not moving at the same time.
Okay.
He explained that in a way that completely fucked my head up, too. I'm like, well, I thought I had it figured out, sort of. I didn't think I had it figured out, but I thought I had a definition that at least was like, okay, well, it's this, even though I don't understand it. And he's like, no, it's not even that.
Okay.
So
yes,
I refer to, please, if you're interested, go to the Sean Carroll podcast.
Well, as I understand it anyway, that it doesn't really matter because the atoms are jiggling in a way that this is solid. You can tell it's solid, and this is the level we live at. Solid.
If somebody drops this on your head, you're in trouble.
That's right. Yeah. So again, we don't live in a quantum world. We live in a macro world where this kind of stuff does matter. Okay. So, so for Deepak, the whole Western way of thinking scientifically, there's a beginning and an end. Time is a linear thing that we can measure, and there's birth and death. All that is the wrong way to think about it. The Buddhist way is that it's just all consciousness, and when you die, you return to the conscious state you were before you were born. So the physical body is just an instantiation of this conscious thing, whatever this is, and okay, I don't know. I'd be surprised, but I'll be pleasantly surprised. I'll tell you that if it turns out, I close my eyes for the last time and I wake up and there's Deepak and whoever, my friends, Carl Sagan and Stephen Jay Gould and all the greats, Asimov are there. Everybody's there. Hitch is there. It's like, oh boy, okay, this isn't hell. If that's true, I'm not against any of this. Just like I'm not against Ray Kurzweil and these guys figuring out that we can live 200 years or 300 years. Great if you can do it, but let's just, so when they say to me, Shermer, don't you want to live to be 500? It's like, just get me to 80 without prostate cancer. Give me to 90 without Alzheimer's, 100. Get me to 100 so I'm not on a morphine drip in a bed. Just quality of life incrementally, year by year. And if it turns out you solve these problems and we lived 150, 200, and then we have a bunch of other problems we don't even know about yet. Okay.
Well, I think there's some beauty in temporary things that we, for whatever reason, we're avoiding that concept. We're terrified of things ending. But there's beauty in things being temporary.
Right.
Like, you don't want to go to see a movie that's 100 hours long.
That's right.
A movie's a great movie when it's 90 minutes. You're in, you're out. Maybe 2 hours if it's 3 hours if it's Blade Runner or something crazy.
I quote Christopher Hitchens in my book because I love his analogy. First of all, you're at the party and death taps you on the shoulder and says, you have to leave. And worse, the party's going to go on without you, and they're going to all have fun. It's like, oh, no. But he says if the Christian version of heaven and hell is real, you're tapped on the shoulder at the party until you can never leave the party. It's like, oh, that's even worse. I don't want to do anything forever.
Right. And imagine the classical version of what heaven is. Like a guy with a harp and there's a bunch of babies with wings. Like, what?
Or even that aside, that that's why Hitch called it celestial North Korea. You have a dictator that knows all of your thoughts.
Yeah.
And everything you're going to do. It's like, wait a minute. That does not sound like fun to me.
Kid Rock on Bobby Bones. the radio station.
Really cool for me because I'm a massive fan. Kid Rock's here.
Hey, good morning.
Hey, you're over here at country, but it makes sense.
Yeah, it's I've been creatively confused for some time now, floating around here and there, and some people are happy about that, some people aren't. But you know, at the end of the day, I just kind of try to make whatever is inspiring me at the time, and you know, whatever music it.
My question would be that because listen, when I was in college radio, I was playing ball with a ball like crazy. How was it in your mind that you can transcend from this polar and still it all fit?
I mean, I think a lot of that was luck. It was just, I mean, because when I did that, from Ball with the Ball to that album, and then came with Picture, I remember the head of the record company at that time told me like that was probably going to kill my career. Like, what was the matter with me? And I remember I would sing it live, and people would stare at me like I was just crazy.
When you sing Picture live?
Yeah, before it really, you know, was a single and came out. And even when it was a single, it took forever to hit. We did a different version with Allison Moore that we cut down here. She cut down here in Nashville. You know, I did it with Sheryl Crow, and then that started to take off, sold 500,000 copies. And then a few stations played it, and it just took off. How? I don't know. I've never really gotten a lot of radio play. I've never been that guy. I never had a #1 song. You know, even all summer long, it went #1 around the world, but never in America.
Oh,
I've never had #1 song in America.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's just never. I don't know. It's not been my thing. I'm not. I respect the award shows. I get it. It's not been my thing. I'm not. You know, I know kind of how they work and what goes on in that world. That's not a game I really chose to play.
You say you don't have any #1s, but you have platinum records.
Lots of them.
Right. So, like,
Yeah, but you would just assume.
Just to counterpoint you, as you say, you don't have, but you have the fans #1s, and when you sell platinum records, that's people buying music. That's
My whole thing's been live. Obviously, you have to make the records, and I think I've made some pretty good ones, some decent ones, and but it's been live where everything's happened. You know,
I've been to 3 Kid Rock shows. I love it. Like,
thank you.
I mean, it's energy.
Dang, I need to go.
Yeah, you would like it.
No, I know. I'm already a Kid Rock fan. I'm already a fan. But at least I was like back. I mean, still like lawn standing. But I don't know. Would you ever picture me as like a big Kid? My name is Kid. Like, would you picture me there?
Somewhere.
Like, I am shocked right now that. I mean, you're not. That doesn't mean you're like struggling by any means. Not having a #1. Like Bobby made a good point.
Even Cowboy.
Wow, really?
Not even close.
What?
That was all big because of MTV. Really, that was, you know, the catalyst for me back then, because it gave an outlet for what I was doing, because there was nobody who was going to play a half country lick where I'm talking about a cowboy going out west in a modern day experience with heavy rock at the end. I mean, they would just tell me flat out, like, we have nowhere to play this. They didn't even know how to classify the record, which bin to put it in. Do we classify it as rock or rap? And a lot of people don't know a funny stat, which I like to brag about because it's just so, you know, out of left field, is if you factor in the record clubs, remember the buy 10 CDs for a penny type thing?
Yeah, like the Columbia House.
Columbia House, a big scam. They never reported those records. If you factor those in, I did about 2 million records there. Devil Without a Cause really was over 14 million copies. And they didn't know how to classify it. They classified it as a rap record. So technically I have the biggest selling rap album of all time.
Nice.
And I'm sitting here on your country show right now.
We like that.
Yeah, Kid Rock's here. Man. First time I heard the song, I was sitting in the office with Rod, our boss over here, and he was like, and we listened to it, and I was like, man, that fits. That's our people. That fits. But also this fits. Also, this fits. And sonically, they're not the same.
No.
Wait, that wasn't a #1?
It wasn't like 7 or 8 countries around the world.
But not
it's
America.
a funny story
the
because
jam.
there was this pop station that you got to, you know, kiss their ass to get the #1 record at some level. It's out in L.A. and this, that, and the other. And I was like, I don't know. I was like, and I was talking to, I think it was Seacrest or somebody one morning out there, and I was like playing along a little bit, and I'm like, oh God, I feel so greasy right now. And they're like, well, you gotta, like, you know, what do you think? And this, I had it out with this program director years before that. And I was like, okay. And I was thinking, I'm going to kill this right now because I'm about to say something very rude. And I know when I was like, He's like, so what do you think? I heard you with the program director. I was like, I go, he ain't gonna make my record #1 because I slept with his wife. And I didn't, of course.
Oh,
but
I was about to be like, what?
No, I didn't. But that pretty much killed the chance of #1 record right there. All the radio people were just sitting in the other room like, oh. Like, we had a #1 record if you could have just shut up. And I'm like, yeah, I can't.
You feel sleazy about this appearance?
What's that?
You feel sleazy about this?
No, I was actually looking forward to this.
Oh,
and
good.
I don't know if you know how many radio things they do these days, but it's basically you and Howard Stern for this record.
Oh, wow,
I appreciate that because I'm a genuine fan.
Yeah, I could tell, and I like your show.
You have glasses. Are those real glasses?
Yeah,
I'm always
bifocals. Well, they see up and down. I can see here regular, but here's when I got to read close. I got to read the menu. Jeff Ruby's. I'm like,
Does that mean you're getting older? Has it always been that way? Because I'm
getting older. There's no question. After we did all these stringing shows in Detroit, like Grandpa's hip hurt.
You did? What you do? Did you do like 6 in a row? I don't know how many. You did
we
a bunch.
6, but not in a row. We didn't.
You sold out the place 6 times at Little Caesars Arena, right? The new place.
Mm-hmm. My hip was hurting. I was like, what is that? My shoulder. I'm like, because obviously when doing those Ball with the Boss songs, I bounce around a lot. And
oh no.
I'm 46 years old, and it's not going to go on forever. That was really kind of one of my deviant plans, like early on. Not only did I love country music, but I'm like, that is a way to get older in music gracefully. It's hard, man, in rock and roll.
Like health-wise?
I love Steven Tyler, but you see him bouncing around, you're like, come on, man.
Health-wise,
tone it down a notch.
Steven Tyler takes really good. He's come in before, and I had a whole conversation with him about his health and green juice and health-wise, so fascinating. I was like, wow, you really take care of yourself. But have you found yourself doing crazy thing? I don't know what you were like before, but now do you do anything you look like you take really good care of yourself?
Yeah, the last several years, yeah. I probably started around 40, and I was like, all right, cut it out. And I was out there.
What is that?
I'm sure you've Googled me before. Seen some of the shenanigans that went on, and it's all true.
I appreciate you taking time to come in. I know it's early in the morning, and again, I don't know how early in the mornings you usually get up.
I'm up at 6:30.
Are you?
Yeah.
Why you get up so early?
I like the mornings. I think a lot of people have said this. You get the time to yourself. And I get that 2-3 hours. To myself, and I really like it. It's just tough when you got to get back in tour mode and go to the West Coast, because then, 11 p.m. and being East Coast from Detroit, between Detroit and Nashville, it's, Grandpa's tired.
Even for me, I'll go work on the West Coast, and I get up at 3 in the morning.
Yes, that's got.
So I got to get up. I got to get up at 1 in the morning. If you go, let's just stop the West Coast. We'll just stay off.
I don't go to Europe anymore.
Champagne problems. Champagne problems.
100%, but doesn't negate the fact.
Yeah. I'm glad you're here. I'm not just here in this room, but I'm glad you're here in the format.
Hey, years ago, when I had Rev Run on the road, one of my heroes from Run DMC told me I was bitching about going to Europe and this, and it was going to be blah, blah, blah. And he was in the same in my hotel room. He goes, hey, man, go where you celebrated, not tolerated. And I feel like that in Nashville, so
awesome.
Thank you, Tennessee.
All right, Kid Rock. Amy, you want anything you want to say?
Hi.
Oh, yeah, you've already said hello.
Okay.
All right.
Well, thanks for
As you can see, we're all big fans.
We're not geeking out.
Yeah.
This one's awesome. Laird Hamilton with Cal Kingsbury.
Let's talk a bit about flow, because people have this idea, I'm buddies with a guy named Andy Stump, who was a Navy SEAL, and he's, Red Bull wingsuit guys, jumped out with oxygen masks at fucking 30,000 feet, squirrel suits, all that stuff, base jump. And he just, after stealing fire, we come to understand, you're not an adrenaline junkie. You don't have a death wish. You are chasing a flow state, which is this wonderful, beautiful sensation of stillness, timelessness, and it also kicks off all these amazing neurochemicals that we absolutely fucking love and enjoy. And that is the thing that we chase.
Yeah.
You've surfed some of the biggest waves. You're constantly looking for new things. Is that the draw, or is it to continue to push the boundaries? How does that go back and forth between because you're still, I mean, like the last time I was here, I interviewed your wife, Gabby, and, you know, I wanted to get you on, but you had a place you had to go because there were some waves coming in, right? So like that's still in you, and it's really rad to see because you take care of yourself that you can still do it. I don't even know where I'm fucking going with that. Is that just is there a never-ending chase there, or is it just something that now that you've experienced it, it's something that you don't want to not experience again?
You know, I mean, I think it's probably a little of all of it. I think there's pieces of all of it that keep you driving, right? Not wanting to lose something that you've gotten. Maybe you've never fully gotten what you potentially think you could get. So the constant pursuit. I mean, one thing about the ocean, you know, it's not like the sky. You just eventually you can always go to 58,000 feet in a plane, but we can't always have a giant wave. We can't, it's not a fixed thing. So that kind of, the elusiveness of it is part of the attraction as well. I always used to resent, oh, you're an adrenaline junkie, because somehow I felt like that's a disclaimer to say that, that you're not intelligent. Like somehow that's just, oh, you're a meathead and you're just adrenaline junkie. You're just looking for that high.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was kind of so limiting for us, because we're not, I mean, adrenaline is a side, is one of the byproducts of putting yourself in the situation, and you can harness that and get incredible strength and intelligence. And I mean, when you're fully adrenalized, you're highly aware. I mean, the flow state for me makes so much sense. Why? And I believe that we were probably all in flow state when we were in nature more, and we were primal. We had to have an ability to see and move and do things in a way to survive in nature, because it's so brutal. So I think we've lost that. And so those of us that have the opportunity to experience it again, seek it out and really grasp it. But one thing for sure is that it's the situation demands to put you in that flow state, right? That's the optimum. And what you get from that, I mean, I think it's one of the, it's one of the fountains of youth. Like if you want to say, hey, what's one of the fountains of youth? I go, well, flow state for sure would be one of them. And I don't know if it's because the consequences of dying or make you feel more alive, and then the result is that you're more alive or not. But there's a correlation between the relationship of those two. But flow state is that's something and there's different levels of it. Obviously, I mean, it's a spectrum, like a flow state spectrum of, the deeper and the more intimate it is, I think the more effort and time has been put in. So I think they talk about 10,000 hours or whatever. And it's really just seems to be when it goes from conscious decision-making into unconscious decision-making, where you don't have to, you're not thinking about the next move you're going to do and everything. You just automatically are doing those things.
It becomes reflex because you change it, just like Bruce Lee, right?
Exactly.
If you're thinking about it, it's fucking too late.
Way too late. Well, that brain moves at 125, and the subconscious moves at like 30,000 times that speed, like crazy. You got light speed, and you got highway speed. I mean, it's and I think those are the difference. But I think we've only begun to understand it, just because we're getting science, we're starting to connect the two and see the result. But for sure, there's an adrenaline aspect to it. You're drawn to that part of it because it makes you feel alive. Part of it is because it's that, what you said, where there's a timeless moment where there's no, I always talk about surfing. It's interesting. It's one of the things that what's happening behind you by looking ahead. And if you really know how to see the water and what's happening, what's happening behind. You just know. You can just tell by what's happening in front. And I described that, it's like, and there's no beginning and no end. It's just a continuation. Where you stop is where you start the next time. But there's no it's kind of, there's a timeless aspect. And there's a timeless aspect, I think, the flow state too. I think those are interwound.
Yeah, and it definitely seems like, I mean, you can be in flow handling emails. You can be in flow in a lot of ways, but it definitely seems like the more that's on the line, the greater the requirement to be in flow. Because if I'm in my head thinking about anything else, any distractions at all, something my wife said to me, something I have due the next day, if there's anything else, or if there's doubt, if there's anything where negative monkey mind wants to chatter, I'm fucked. It doesn't matter what it is. It
Doesn't
could be me falling on the bunny slopes on a mountain.
Yeah.
It could be, you know, me not being able to get up on my board on a really small wave, and that's just the consequence. Or it could be
big one.
I can die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and obviously fighting is going to do that. Fighting's going to, you know, the consequences of you not watching what's going on, you're going to get cracks, you know? So again, I think anytime there's a consequence, and like you said, the greater the consequence, the more everything's turned up, because that's how the system works, especially under threat. It's just like, hey, if death is one of the consequences, and it's real obvious, like, hey, I slip, I fall, I die, everything's on, and it doesn't get more on. It doesn't go more. There's nothing else that we really can do that can turn it more on than that. Then, because that's our most, that's the most precious thing we have. Everything else is kind of a luxury after living, right? First we're alive, and then it's like, okay, we have the luxury to, you know, do what we want when we're alive. But
yeah, and I think the beautiful thing about putting ourselves in those high stakes situations is that it really has the ability to kind of quiet the noise of all the other bullshit that happens in everyday waking consciousness. It just sets it down a couple octaves. Yes. You're like, okay, that really doesn't matter.
And the priority and the prioritization of what's important. You just kind of you get those, and you kind of reprioritize them. Oh yeah, this is really not that much, but you know, not worth it to get worked up over that or that or that or that. Just shifts your psyche, which I think is good for it. I think more people need to feel that state. I think it'd be a better world if first of all, there's a certain level of humility, I think, that is demanded of you when you really are in full assessment of what's going on and where we are and what we're, you know, just being alive. That when you're really aware of it and how how fragile life is, and how you know, how quick death happens and all that, there brings you as soon as you kind of leave the I'm invincible mentality that you have when you're 20 and full of testosterone, and you read the reality of, like, you know, hey, this is living some dangerous shit.
Yeah,
you know,
no doubt about it.
Puts you in a better frame of mind.
Well, how old are you now?
I'll be 56 in a couple months,
dude. Man, you're a specimen. And I remember, you know.
Well, look who's talking. You're the specimen.
No, not at all. I mean, even in the pool, you know, I remember doing the training. One of the first times that I came here to do the training with you guys, I was doing the farmer's walks in the deep end.
Oh, yeah.
And you were super encouraging, you know, but I remember I could only make it one width of the pool, and then I had to come up for air. And then I think by the second day I could go down and back once. And, you know, again, super encouraging from you. And then somebody was like, yeah, Laird can do that 8 times. And I was like, fuck. I mean, layers.
But
there's layers
time,
to the game,
but that's
right?
like everything.
Yeah,
you know, it's just time in and also too, part of it's comfort. You know, the first time you do it, you're like, oh, freaking out. And then the second time you're freaking out less. And then the third, and then, you know, and then the 10,000th time you do it, you're like, oh, here we are again. You're going to do this to me. You know, your body's like, oh, you're going to subject me to this.
Yeah, you get more situational awareness is definitely calming.
For sure.
But let's talk about that. Let's talk about all the work you've had to do, because you've had some really fucking gnarly injuries.
Yes.
Talk about how you have pieced yourself back together and put yourself in a position to where you still can do the things that you love at this age.
Which is the most important thing.
And look the way you look, you know, like that's.
Well, I think the biggest thing about wanting to kind of be, well, first of all, wanting to enjoy, you know, one of my best friends was 84. He just passed away last year, Mr. Wildman. And he could do everything to the end, right? He could heli snowboard and bike and
ride his bike
and
all
swim.
through the mountains here in Malibu.
Yeah, and I think that if you don't want to do something, that's one thing, but you don't want to be stopped by not being able to. I think that would be something a lot more dangerous. To be stopped, like, hey, you can't, and injuries teach you that. I think throughout when you've been hurt enough times, when you kind of go, well, am I going to be able to do it again? Or is this thing going to get better? Or am I, you know, I think that's a big driving force. Just, am I going to be able to, and also too, just sanity, just to, you know, you feel better when you're tired. you just feel better. You're more amenable. You're a nicer person. You're just better with your family, with your friend in life. You just better, food's better, sleep's better. You just and you need, and to tire you out, especially if you've been doing high volumes of activity for your life. It just takes high volumes of activity, unless you're doing undermining with some, taking shitty care of yourself and staying up all night and doing stuff like that, and that makes you tired too. But the repercussions,
different kind of tired, right?
Jonathan Haidt. Enjoy.
Because now a lot of single parent households will come about because the women really will want to pair bond with incompetent men.
No, that I think that's right. So, I mean, it gets us into all kinds of different issues. I personally believe that evolutionary psychology is very useful in the social sciences. I think the evidence that prenatal hormones affect brains and gender is affected by prenatal hormones, and men and women. I used to give lectures on this at the University of Virginia when I was a professor there. Sex differences in ability are very small between men and women, but sex differences in interest and enjoyment are really big, and you can see it in little kids, and it's all the way through life. And so I think that there are some important average differences. So I think what we can all agree on, left, right, center, everybody, is that barriers to equal opportunity are bad and should come down. And so to the extent that women were excluded from careers and those barriers are gone, that's great. And then there's some difference of opinion, left, right, as to whether equality is the right outcome, equality of representation. If a field is less than 50% female, is that wrong? Is that a problem? So that's where there definitely is debate. But to get back to your central point, as I said before, one thing that we know in the social sciences, studies of poverty and income mobility, are that kids who are born into a stable environment tend to do better on almost all measures. And there is some debate as to whether cohabiting parents are just as good as married parents. And if they could literally stay together for life, probably they would be just as good. But if you don't have marriage, you don't lock people together, it tends to break up more. So marriage tends to be very good for kids. And if you look at differences in populations and ethnic groups by marriage, those that have high rates of marriage are doing well, and those that have low rates are doing less well. So I was part of a team. I brought together, because I'm non-political, I'm a centrist. I ended up chairing a group of poverty experts from the left and the right. And we worked together for a year to write a report on what programs actually work. What do we know from the research actually works to lift people out of poverty? And the two really big ones are long-acting reversible contraception. That breaks the cycle of poverty. But the people on the right didn't want to endorse that. They didn't want to be on paper endorsing birth control. And the other one is marriage. But the people on the left were afraid to endorse that because are we excluding gay people? Although by this time, gay marriage is already legal. But the left has sometimes had a problem with marriage. And so it was a great example of how you actually need both sides. We were able to reach a compromise that really what we really need is delayed responsible parenting. Kids do really well when people don't have kids early and before they can support kids. All right, so again, back to your question. As women have been doing better and better, and that's great, very few people would be opposed to that. Ideally, boys and men would also be doing better, or at least not falling behind. And what we've seen in terms of entering the labor force, as women's participation in the labor force has been going up and up and up, men's has been going down. We have many more men dropping out. There are a lot of reasons for this. Video games get better, pornography gets better. I'm being a little facetious, but the fear is that in the future, a lot of men, if they have a choice between working a low-wage job and just playing video games and living in their parents' basement or living off a UBI, Universal Basic Income, a lot of men, I think, are going to take that option. And when that happens, because women generally want to marry up, they want a man they can respect. They want a man who has at least as much education and resources as they do. This is on average. On average, and if you look at dating sites, women are more attracted to men who are successful, and men don't care that much about the woman's success. They're attracted to women who are beautiful. That's a well-studied difference in dating and mating. So yeah, we are facing trends in which women increasingly are going to have trouble and are having trouble finding a man worth marrying. And as technology allows them to have kids on their own, which again, a good thing to people should have opportunities, I think we are going to see a continued decline of marriage, and this is going to have continued problems for kids.
So what do you think are some of the solutions to help some of these young boys with such a draw to video games, to the pornography and all these things? What can we do as a society to help support them, to actually help lift them up as well?
Yeah. Well, so I'm not an expert in that, but I've come across a few things I think would be helpful. So for one thing, so in my book, The Coddling of the American Mind with Greg Lukianoff, we have a whole chapter on play and the importance of play. All kids need rough and tumble play. All mammals do. Kittens, puppies, all mammals play when they're young. And kids learn so much from play. You learn teamwork, you learn how to control your aggression, you learn how to settle disputes. So the more kids have outdoor, unsupervised, rough and tumble play, the more they learn, the healthier they get. That's been declining for a long time, in part because we've gotten so scared that our kids will be abducted, which was never true. There's almost no abduction in this country. In part because electronic entertainments have gotten better and better. And this predates the iPhone, but man, the iPhone has put it right there. The touchscreen technology is just so compelling to kids. When my son was 2 and I got my first iPhone, the fact that he was able to master it at the age of 2, why didn't I sell everything I owned and put it all in Apple stock at the time? I would have been very rich if I'd done that. So I do think that, the research on video games is complicated. I don't want to say that video games are necessarily a problem for boys, but I think the number of hours played pushes out other activities. So delaying that, giving them more playtime. We've ramped up schooling and schooling pressures even early. So I think we need to make childhood more conducive, childhood and early schooling, K through 5 or 6 at least, much more conducive to boys. That's something I think we really need to do to improve their educational outcomes. In terms of employment, I think there's some research on the value of internships and apprenticeships, teach boys trades and skills. As the economy shifts away from manufacturing and towards services, women have an advantage. Women are more skilled generally at interpersonal relationships. Men are more skilled generally at physical labor and at sort of machines thinking about things. So men are at a disadvantage in that way, but apprenticeships there's some research showing that that's a good way to help boys and men make the jump from education into the workforce. There's been so much attention to women and whether schools were failing women in the 90s. I think we just need to even it up and just stop talking about men and women, but just like kids. Let's, where are their problems? We've just got to help all kinds of populations that are not making the adjustment into this new economy.
No, that's great. I remember The Atlantic did an article about the issues with the education system in regards to higher learning when it comes to the equality of male-female breakdown. And one of the points it brought up was I might be butchering this data, but in the 1950s, they realized that the average university was about 58% male and about 42% women. Yeah. And at that time, it was a crisis. There was an issue. There was not equal representation of women. Feminist organizations were arguing the lack of equality. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of the resources and support then went into helping women now go into school, which is an amazing, exceptional thing. But here's the problem. Now, when that data is now flipped, where the average university is 58% women, 42% men. If we're arguing for equality and symmetry across the genders, now we need to put that same energy we put in the 50s and 60s and 70s into helping the women, into now helping the young men. But what I've noticed is, unfortunately, when people are so bogged down with their political ideologies, it's not about helping humanity and servicing one another.
That's right. So I think part of what's come in, and this is in the Coddling the American Mind, Greg Lukianoff and I talk about 3 great untruths. And so the first is what doesn't kill you makes you weaker, and that was the anti-fragility we talked about. The second is always trust your feelings, which we didn't talk about, but that's, instead of actually we did in a sense, critical reasoning, critical thinking. You can not like somebody, but that doesn't mean that you should say, well, therefore they're bad. So more critical thinking, more separation of head and heart, for example. And the third is life is a battle between good people and evil people. This is the third of the 3 terrible ideas, and it's the most damaging. And this is what I'm seeing in the educational world in a lot of places is if you think about education in terms of like helping kids develop their potential, well, that's great. But if you look at everything as a battle between groups, and if men are dominating women, men are oppressing women, and you talk about structural sexism, well, okay, there could be structural sexism. There could well be. But you can't just say, oh, well, if there's more men than women, then it's structural sexism. You can't say that. That makes no sense. You have to look at the input stream. You have to look at the pipeline. You have to look at are there obstacles that women face that men don't face? And sometimes there are, especially say I'm a professor. Getting tenure happens for the work you do in your 20s and early 30s. And we've come to realize, well, it's harder for women because they're mostly having children in that age. So we have to adjust the tenure clock. So that's an example of what you might call structural sexism. It wasn't imposed for sexist reasons. It was sort of an accidental obstacle for women. And we're working on it. We've made it easier, somewhat easier. Okay. But now in K through 12 and all the way into university, now women get by far the majority of the bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, and PhDs. Women are dominating in universities. Should we now reverse that and say, oh my God, universities are structurally sexist? We have to reverse that. If you see life as a battle between men who are the oppressors and women who are the victims, well, then you see nothing wrong with that. You say, well, it's about time. Those men deserve it. They've been oppressing women for so long. They deserve to be oppressed. But these are kids. These are individuals who are not guilty of anything. So this us versus them, life is a battle between good groups and evil groups. This is craziness in a multi-ethnic secular democracy. For us to promote this group versus group thinking, this is going to destroy us.
Yeah, one of the points I shared was the power seat corrupts all who sits on it. And basically that concept is built upon what people have failed to recognize historically is in more hunter-gatherer societies, the advantage went to men. Because usually when it comes to just physical war, not just guns, usually the men were more equipped for war and fighting and things like that. So naturally the power would gravitate towards men. And so obviously there's going to be men who are doing predominantly more of the bad because if whoever has the power makes the rules and then they can oppress those who they want to oppress. And so but the issue is that if you take any other human, whether that's a male or female, or let's say a female, put them in that same seat with that power, they could also do the same evil. Doesn't necessarily mean that the gender itself is evil, but let's say that an individual who doesn't have the best morals or values put in that position is now going to experience these issues. So to your point, a lot of people look at, it was the white people who were bad, and it's them being bad, which is fundamentally racist, or it's the men who are bad, which is fundamentally sexist, or the Christians who are bad. Like all these things they now equate to a character, a character type or a phenotype that exists, but it has nothing to do with that in and of itself. It has everything to do with you take anybody and you put them in that position, and they're going to do this. But
beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. That is one of the core insights of social psychology. So in social psychology, our most important experiment is the Milgram experiment, the Stanley Milgram experiment, where Stanley Milgram was basically trying to model the Holocaust. And how did the Germans do this? Is it because Germans are evil people? And he created a lab situation in which random men were brought into the lab, and when they were given the role of shocking the victim, most of them went all the way to the point where it seemed as though they had killed the person. So in social psychology, we're very good at recognizing the power of the situation. And to your point, if you look at the history of race in America, my God, I mean, so I was so fortunate to be able to, I was invited to go on, Congressman John Lewis does an annual pilgrimage to the civil rights sites, and he brings along a bunch of Congress people and others, and I was lucky last April to be one of the others. And one of the most powerful, the day in Montgomery, the day in, the lynching memorial.
Thank you, folks, for listening. Tune in next week for more podcasts of all podcasts.
I went down to St. James Infirmary. Saw my baby there. She was stretched out on a long white table. So cold, so sweet, so fair. Let her go, God bless her. Wherever she may be, she can look this wide world over, but she'll never find a sweet man like me. Bragging. When I die, bury me in straight lace shoes. I want a box bag coat and a Stetson hat, John B. that is. Put a $20 gold piece on my watch chain, so the boys will know that I died standing back.